Hey there, friends. So I came across an interesting conversation the other day. It was one that involved some young adults, and I have a young adult in our family, somebody who's in their 20s and getting close to graduating college, and then, they're starting to think about, what's next for them. What career-wise, what are they going to do? Family-wise, what are they going to do? So this type of conversation kind of hit home to me a little bit, made me think a little bit. Basically, there were a couple of young people that were talking about family planning, right? When am I going to have kids? And one of them said, well, I don't think I'm going to have kids. And they said, well, why not? And they were like, well, because, kids are so expensive and that doesn't, I want to be able to do the things that I want to do. I want to be able to have money to spend. And all that makes perfect sense. It's pretty logical, I guess. And the other person said, well, I want to have kids, but I don't want to have them until I'm ready. And what that meant to that person was being financially stable. And I'll tell you why this kind of hit me a little bit. We responsibly tell our kids constantly, you don't want to settle down and start a family until you're financially stable and you're ready to do that, right? But what does it actually mean to be financially stable? What is it that they're actually looking for? If what you're doing is preparing your kids to be financially stable, you're making all the wrong moves. Financial stability, in the shortest definition of how people define it, would be to have a large amount of savings set aside, to have plenty of money, maybe a place to live, maybe own a house, pay off their car loan, whatever it is that they want to do before they have kids. And I think that there is a certain part of all of us where we want to make sure that we've taken care of certain financial obligations or have certain things in order before we start having families and things like that. But if the mindset is to just fill your bank account up with a bunch of money and make sure you have lots of money for a rainy day, because rainy days do happen, I think you're thinking about it completely the wrong way. And financial stability in and of itself isn't, in my perspective, if I were advising my child at this age, on whether or not, when to have a family, I would not bring financial stability into it at all. Think about it this way. Currency's fake, right? It's heavily manipulated. It has no value other than the perception of society, the perception of people around that money. You can put as much money as you want to in your bank account, and the value of that money could disappear tomorrow, because it's based on perception. It's based on something that is not real. There's no truth behind money. There's nothing real. So why would we tell our kids to plan their lives and focus their lives around a fictitious thing? Do we tell our kids when we read them books that are fairy tales that that's how they should base their lives, to be fairy tale characters? I mean, I realize that there are some people today who identify as fairy tales, and that's perfectly acceptable in today's society. But why would we continually push the notion on our kids that everything in their lives depends on them to fill their bank accounts with some fictitious amount of money, some fictitious thing? It doesn't matter how much you have in that bank account. It doesn't matter how much you've stored under your mattress. You could have a ton of savings, more savings than many other people. And it's not going to be enough when you have a family. It's not going to be what pulls you through. So if it's wanting a family, if that's the values that you have, there are other steps that I think people should be thinking about. There are other things that they should be taking into consideration. And really, financial stability shouldn't be one of them at all, because it's not real. It doesn't actually exist. And for those of us who are older, we can tell you that money comes and goes. It comes and goes very quickly. You could always make it back if you're smart. Sometimes you have a lot of it and you lose a lot of it pretty quickly. It's not something that you can depend on to always be there. And because it is fictitious, and based on where society is going today, you can't depend on it to always be there. It won't always be there. Just think about it this way, that the value of that currency, the value of what you're putting your dependency on can be changed and manipulated by a few people at the top at any given moment in time. That's what interest rates are all about, currency exchanges. I mean, that dollar is constantly being manipulated because it's not real. It's just a perception. It's a perception of trade. And I agree it's good to have some because it is a widely accepted form of trade. So you can go and trade with a lot of different people and they'll accept a dollar bill. They'll accept a lot of things. But that isn't ever going to make you set up for life. There's nothing to it because it is fake. I don't want to raise my kids making them think that by being dependent on some sort of fake thing and filling their bank accounts with a fairy tale is eventually going to set them up to have a family. If they want to have a family, you know, there are much bigger things to look at, much more important things. Now, there's another side of this that I think if you understood, it would probably bother you a little bit. While the U.S.'s policy may be, okay, it's freedom of choice, I think when you look back at the history of the steps that we've taken with USAID and knowing that from, you know, as far back as 1969, there has been a program within USAID focusing on the United States, a lot of these programs with contraceptives, family planning, education, and all of that is actually designed for population control. You can have the free will to make the choice, whatever it is that you want to, but we want to remind you that if you're not financially stable enough to have children, you shouldn't do it because you're going to put your kids in this situation, that situation, and X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. I also know that economics is a way to control population because, you know, every species on the face of this earth tends to expand and contract population size based upon available resources. We all depend on currency as our resource, and that gives the ultimate control over resources to a selected few because they can decide at any moment in time what that currency is worth. They can manipulate that currency to make more of it, to make less of it. And so they can expand and contract the availability of resources simply with, you know, a few adjustments here and there. And something that I've noticed in recent years is, you know, when you go back to the baby boomer population, for example, it was possible for a man or a wife to go out and get a full-time job and support their entire family very comfortably in the middle class, with the other parent being able to stay at home and be there for the kids. That was a possibility during that generation. And then if you look over time, it became harder and harder. And I know that part of, you know, what USAID has tried to do in other countries, and this was, you know, originally in the thought process, was, you know, we need to promote gender equality and really promote both genders going and working, you know, a full-time job. And so suddenly, you know, now you had a bunch of people going out and working full-time jobs. They were making a lot of extra money, so they'd still have the family that they wanted to have, and then they'd just pay for daycare. So it was that easy, right? At daycare, though, I can tell you, that can be about as expensive as somebody's salary these days. So as inflation continues, we've gotten to the point now, today, where, you know, the average household or the average income in the U.S. is less than $50,000 a year. So a married couple almost has to both work just to pay their bills, just to get by. It's really hard to live off of $3,900 a month, right? So then add kids to that equation and things get a lot harder, okay? So that's kind of, if you look at inflation, if you look at, you know, how much money it takes for us to live, if you look at the value of the currencies that we have and what we get paid, today it's actually very difficult for a young newlywed couple in their 20s to be able to go out and start a family and, have kids, because they're both going to be working as much as they possibly can just to pay for their house, just to pay for their cars. Heck, a new car these days is, whew, have you seen the prices on those things? So it seems like this is an effective tool. It seems like it is being implemented very well, because now you have these young people saying, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to have kids because there's no way that I'm ever going to afford the lifestyle that I want to live if I have kids. Or you have young folks saying, you know what, we're going to wait. We're going to wait until we're financially stable, until we have enough wealth in this fake currency before we decide to have a family. So what's my advice? Let's get back to the point of this thing, right? When I got married to my wife, I had a lot going for me. I had a lot of money in the bank. I was marrying my best friend. We both had kids from previous marriages. We were a combined family. We had enough money for a down payment on a farm. We had a lot of good things going for us. It wasn't long after we got married that all of that changed rather abruptly. We saw a significant amount, all of our savings wiped out within months. And it wasn't necessarily choices that we had made. We were doing fine. We were making responsible choices, and we had the responsible amount of wealth to make those choices at that time. But circumstances can change at any moment in time. They can change overnight. And when they do, suddenly you're going to find yourself in a situation where it takes everything you have to hold on to what you have. And then when it runs out, that's when most people fall apart. Because when it runs out, you can't pay for anything anymore. You're just stuck, right? You have no money, nothing, and everything that you just put your money towards to save, you lose in the end because you can't continue to keep it up. And we hit that point. We hit the point where we had been financially wiped out, and everything that we had used our money for was then at risk because we had no way of paying for it. And that's when I discovered that there's something more important than wealth. There's something more important than this currency, this fake currency, because none of that is real. What's real is your relationship to your spouse. What's real is your relationship to your children. And I will say to anybody who is questioning whether or not to have kids, life is a remarkable thing. It is an endless cycle. It starts with, as we see it, it starts with birth and, ends with death, but then that death turns into decay, which eventually supplies new life again. It's an everlasting circle that you're just a part of. You're here for a period of time and you're a part of that. It seems kind of silly that that's all the role in the world that we would play in consciousness, and I think that we do play a bigger role than just that. I think that this period of time of which we call life is just a glimpse of our overall being, to put it that way. In that life cycle, there's an opportunity for you to actually give life. And when you give life, when you have a child, suddenly things change for you. Suddenly things change because you start to care about another person or love another person well beyond yourself, right? And I know that there are people who feel they love their spouse that way, but I would say it's even different when you have a child. When you have a child, and you can have unconditional love for your spouse, you can have unconditional love for a lot of family members, but when you have a child, it's different. It's a different state of being that you can't possibly achieve without being a parent. And it's a dangerous state of being. It's a dangerous state of being to anybody who wants to control you, because you cannot control a parent. You cannot tell a parent what not to do for their kids. They're going to do what they feel is best for their kids. Good parent will. I realize that there are some parents out there who aren't this way, but for most of the people who experience parenthood, they are uncontrollable. They don't have a problem identifying with who they are. They know exactly how they made the baby. They don't have issues with a lot of things because they have reached that level of being where they have that connection that you can't possibly get any other way. And it's elevated their thought to the point that it cannot be manipulated. And like I said, there are exceptions to everybody and everything. And I realize that. But to the majority of us who are parents, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, back to, family planning. Should we be teaching our kids about family planning? And I would be very cautious, like I said, to make it focused on wealth and finances, because that will go. In our situation, it went. Wealth is something that can go away overnight. You can lose it all. If you haven't invested in what's real and what's true, you're never going to be able to take care of a family. If you don't have any money at all, but you've invested in truth, then you don't need to be wealthy to have a family. In our situation, what we had that was real was a strong relationship between a husband and a wife. We had kids, something that we would give our lives for, something that we will never give up on trying to care for. And we had, that creates a strong family. We had strong extended family. We had, the truth of the whole part of family planning was right there. We had beliefs that we shared. We had faiths that we shared. We had a lot of things that we shared. So when it came to tough times, when we had nothing left but what we had between us, that was more than enough to get through that period of time. And so that's like the number one thing. That's the number one thing that we should be teaching our kids is, find that with somebody else. Find that relationship that is so coherent, there's not a whole lot that can break it apart. And that's hard to do in another person. That's hard to find with another person. It becomes easy with kids because, like I said, you gain, like a different level of thought once you have kids. And if anything, having kids within a family helps to, bring parents together a lot of times. There are some people who focus so much attention on their kids, they forget about their own relationship together. And that could also be tragic in the long run. We had that foundation, and really everything else that we needed kind of fell in place because now you have the motivation, you have the support, you have the patience, you have somebody else who's going through the trying times with you that's understanding. And like I said, when wealth is something that is fictitious to begin with, it's actually relatively easy to rebuild, to recoup, to come up with a new creative way to get. The other thing that we learned during that time was how to barter, how to trade. That's where you have to get into the basis of what is supply. Is supply actually coming from some fictitious dollar bill that actually has no intrinsic value? Or is it coming from my skills? Is it coming from, things that I can do away with because of something else that I need? So I go and trade with somebody. Supply is not dictated at all by currency. There is nothing in this world that says that currency has to be the basis of everything that you're supplied with. If you can teach your kids to think about life from a different standpoint, something that's not based on currency, something that's based on skill, intelligence, love, all of the true things instead of the fake things, that's when they're going to be ready to start a family. They won't need a whole lot to start a family. We're trained in society to want a whole lot. We're trained to want the new car. We're trained, and I mean, they do a great job advertising the lifestyle to us. But is the lifestyle in and of itself real? No, it's a fake thing too. All of the stuff that we're trained to want, to desire, to think makes our lives important is all fake. Jobs, for example. I remember, I worked my tail off in college and started working as soon as I got out of college. And I was real proud of myself because I had a job right out of college. And within a few years, I got an office that was right next to the window offices. You know how big of a deal that is, right? And I was in a position at that time where I actually, it was 2008, it was the financial crisis. They were laying off people left and right. I was in the position where I said, the heck with this, I don't want to work for somebody else. And I went out and I invested in a multi-million-dollar property with some other people, and I started my own business. That was, the type of person I was in my early 20s. And I'm sure that most kids are going to be there and try and do all those things. But it can get wiped out pretty easily. People who had been working for the company that I had worked for 20 years, in one day, because the economy made a turn, lost their job. Just one day lost their job. Everything that they relied on for years, they lost. I've seen it happen again and again and again. These turns in the economic cycles happen even more frequently now than they used to. The troughs are deeper now than they used to be. It's almost intentional. You could never, if your goal is to go out and really get a handle on a good job and good savings account, chances are in today's world that within a short period of time, you're going to lose that and have to start over again. It makes it really, really difficult for somebody to actually get ahead. There's only a small percentage that can actually hang with it through all the troubling times to get ahead, if that's what you're focused on. So I don't know, I thought it was an interesting conversation, and I wonder, are we doing our kids an injustice by teaching them to focus on the wrong things? Are we actually putting forth the effort to say, hey, no, you don't need a new car? And it's not that you don't need a new car. It's like, let's look at this. You buy that brand new, within a year, it's going to be old. You're buying something that doesn't last. It doesn't last because it's not real. It's not a real satisfaction. How's that? It's not a real satisfaction. It's a temporary satisfaction. It's a temporary fix. Invest in what is real. And what is real you can't see. What is real you can't buy. And perhaps, that was the other thing that helped us through troubling times, was our grip on faith. Because faith, you can't see it. You can feel it. You can demonstrate it. You can share it. You can bond within it. It's a very real thing. But you can't see it. It's not there. Everything that you see tends to be unreal, or at least, temporal. So I don't know, when your kids are home this holiday season, back from college, wherever it is they might be, I hope, maybe this spurs you to think a little bit, maybe change your approach to how you talk to them about life in general and what they should be planning for, and, help these kids recognize what it is they really need to have in life. If your focus is on some fantasy lifestyle with some fantasy currency and it doesn't have any depth to it, the second a challenge approaches you, you're going to be broke. You're going to be thrown on your back. You're not going to be able to get back up again. And part of that is intentional. If once you get to that point where your focus is on what's real, what's actually important, what's lasting, what's going to be there for you when you're 80, 90 years old, what's going to be there caring for you and your family through every bad time that comes up. If you focus on the real things, the things that are temporal, the things that aren't real, the things that are, just distractions, will come a lot easier to you. They're going to come a lot easier to you because they don't have any power over you. And the less that things have power over you, the more free you are, the more independent you are, the more successful you're going to be. Anyway, just a few thoughts I thought I'd share with you guys today. Have a good week.